Welcome back to the podcast. We're going to be jumping into our January Jumpstart series. This series is one that I'm very passionate about because January is such a time of high motivation and a lot of people start strong. But I saw a stat the other day that 80% of people quit their New Year's resolution and quit their new program within 3 to 4 weeks of starting their new program, which is crazy. And I want to give you a good, fresh restart of how you can actually apply different systems and strategies into your workout routine, into your nutrition routine, and into your lifestyle so that you can actually carry these all year long and see the transformation that you want to, and not be quitting before the end of January because sadly it's a very common thing. And apparently 80% of people end up in that category to be the 20% that continues through the entire year, that knows what to be doing and is actually following a strategy that's going to not only get them their transformation, get them the results that they want, but also going to help them actually stick with something because it's not focused on a restrictive mindset or even focused on a strategy that's not sustainable. So we want to give you a good plan to be following, and this is just going to be part one. Today, I really want to be talking to you about what to be focusing on so that you can actually see change and what that's going to look like in your plan. The biggest mistakes that I see in the beginning of January is often in the form of just doing things in a really restrictive state. You're coming off the holidays, you might not feel your most energized, and you might have even fallen off track just a little bit and gone the other direction of results that you want. And that leads a lot of people to doing restrictive diets and restrictive plans and just going as hard as they possibly can, jumping into 75 hard and doing really unrealistic routines that aren't sustainable long term. And the reason why things like 75 hard have a deadline is because they are unrealistic to do for a really long period of time. And they're not something that you can do forever. And something that I need you to hear when you're focused on your transformation is you need to be focused on something that you can do forever, that you can adapt to different phases of your life, and that you can actually sustain long term and just make little tweaks to when you need to. If you are only focused on doing these things when there is a deadline, your results are limited and your results are going to have a deadline as well. Yes, it's a good motivator sometimes, but it's also something that is really easy to fall off track. And it's going to get you in the all or nothing mindset. Either you're all on track and you're doing things that are really restrictive, that are really challenging, and that are pushing you, which is great for self-development and improvement. But if you get into that all or nothing mindset, then you fall off track and then you don't really know how to pick yourself back up and you don't know how to balance it all out. You don't have the structure, you don't have the clarity of what to be focusing on, and your plan just kind of feels all over the place. You know what it looks like to be really restrictive and you can do that, but it's hard to stay consistent and therefore results don't always follow. That brings you to results that will then have an end date and it's hard to maintain. And you find yourself the rest of the year in this on and off cycle where you jump into your really restrictive plan when you're just sick of it and you're ready for results again, but then you fall off track and then the cycle continues. So what I want you to do is use 2026 as your launching pad into a plan that's going to be something that you use forever and that you know the basics, you know how to apply to your life, and you know how to have a list of non-negotiables that you can focus on every day, every week, and every month so that you continuously see results and then you maintain them long term. Because one of my biggest passions in coaching is teaching you that you don't have to always have a plan that's going to be restrictive, that you don't always have to be on a plan that requires you to track macros, that requires you to add an extra cardio, that requires you to be in a deficit. Those are all things that you use to get towards a bigger goal. They're not something that are meant to be done forever. If you're in a deficit forever, if you're tracking macros forever and you're losing your mind, there's a reason for that. It's because it's not something that you were meant to do forever. It wants to be comfortable. Your body is meant to maintain itself. Your body is wanting to survive. And the first thing you need to be paying attention to is trusting your body and trusting that your body is wanting the best for you. It's wanting the results that you want and it's wanting to feel its best. And it's not out to get you. It doesn't want you to be overweight. It doesn't want you to be miserable. And it's a matter of balancing out that lifestyle, balancing out the plan so that it is sustainable for you. It's not burning you out. It's not over restrictive, and it allows you to feel your best and thrive in your best through not only a challenge, but then there's that period where you might have to be a little more restrictive and you have to think about calorie deficits, tracking your macros, doing things that are uncomfortable, and that is required for change to occur. Otherwise, your body is going to stay in a state that is the same. It's designed to maintain itself. And if you are in a state where you are no longer wanting that and you want to either increase your muscle mass or you want to decrease your weight, you have to make changes and you have to adapt and you have to get your body to adapt and respond to that. And the only way you can do that that is through change and through challenge. Otherwise, it stays the same. So yes, while your plan should have some challenge in it, or while there may be periods where it's a little bit more challenging in nature, it's not meant to last forever. And so yes, you could be in a period where you are on a lower calorie deficit, where you're training a little bit more, where you have some more cardio, maybe on a structured basis, and you're not necessarily eating to your content level. You have to really focus on high volume foods to stay in your deficit and adding in your walking and adding in your cardio in order for you to maintain that deficit. And there are going to be periods where that is required of you, and sometimes you have to track macros, and then it's a little bit more effort because now you're trying to get your body out of a state of maintaining and into a deficit. So that requires a little bit more work. However, if you do that too long or you do that too long term without any changes, your body adapts. So as you cut those calories, as everything stays the same, you get to a specific weight and your body adapts and it stays the same. So more change is required and you have to grow and build upon that. And if you don't know what to do and you have no structure with that, that's going to prevent you from getting stuck or getting into that cycle where now you are on and off and you quit because progress stops following. You get into that rut where you stop seeing the progress. You're doing all the same things. You're working out really hard, but you don't see the continued change. And it's because you've adapted and your body's adapted. And so we have to kind of get into a good state where you understand how you're going to achieve your goal, what your goal is, how you're going to achieve your goal, and how you're going to do it in a realistic way so that you can carry it long term and then maintain your results at the end. And when I say maintain your results at the end, I think this is really important to understand. Once you get into a deficit where you finally reach your goal weight, say you want to lose 30 pounds, you finally do that, you've hit your lean physique, you don't just stay in your deficit forever because that's not where your body is going to maintain. And it's not going to be in a place that necessarily maintains at the healthiest way where you're going to feel your best, you're going to feel energized, you're going to be getting good sleep, and you're going to be recovering really well. You have to kind of come out of that and get out of that deficit state and bring your body back into its maintenance phase. And that requires work as well. We're going to be bringing up your calories, lowering your cardio, and making sure that we're kind of getting back into a basic state where you maintain. And while that's a lot of science and a lot of background, I think it's just really important to understand because I think that a lot of people jump into these plans at the beginning of the year and their thought is do more, do more, do more, eat less, eat less, eat less, and like eat as little as possible. And it can be very challenging because you'll do that for a short period of time. You might see results instantly because especially after the holidays, you're going to be dropping water weight. You're going to be dropping things from lack of sleep, extra alcohol, extra sugar, extra calories, and your body's going to hold on to that in the form of water weight. So then if you start cutting those things, slashing the calories, cutting the alcohol out, eating less food, working out more, your body's going to rapidly drop body weight. And that's often going to come from water weight. And this is where people get really motivated because they see that change happen really rapidly, right? And then after 2 or 3 weeks, it starts to stay the same. And now we're looking at a fact of, do you have the right structure? Are you focused on a plan that's going to give you progression and that's going to help you build muscle mass? Are you focused on resistance training that is going to give you a split of progression that's going to help you build muscle mass and sustain that muscle mass? Are you focusing on a structured nutrition plan that's focusing on your protein, on your calories, and on your overall macros? Something that I always tell my clients when it comes to calories and macros, calories are going to help change your body weight. Macros are going to help change your body composition. So if you're looking for more muscle mass and less body fat, you want to pay attention to your macros, not just your calories, because a deficit and a surplus will determine if your weight goes up or goes down. Macros are going to determine your body composition and what happens to your body composition. So there's more than just the calorie tracking aspect. And when I talk to a lot of women when they're starting their plans is they just cut their calories in half, and that's what they focus on in January. They find themselves starving because they're not focused on the right things. They're just focused on eating as little as possible, maybe eating a lot of salads, a lot of vegetables and fruits, and they don't have enough substance in their meals. They're not focused on the breakdown of their carbs, their fats, and their proteins. And therefore, they're just focusing on one piece of the puzzle. And sure, your weight's going to drop, but what's going to happen to your body composition? It might not be what you want. And after a certain period of time, when your water weight has fallen off and things have adjusted, you probably will stall and progress will stop. And this is where people fall off track, is because now they have a plan that's preventing them from actually seeing progress, but is so restrictive, it's not something that they can sustain long term. And it's something that's so restrictive that if they're not seeing results, they think, why would I keep doing this? So how do you prevent doing that? You need the right structure in all categories. So I want to go through a few different things that you should be focusing on and what those things that are going to kind of help you with in your plan and how you can kind of get started with them. The first is that you should be focusing on your protein. Like we just talked about with macros, protein is going to be king with your macronutrients. It's going to help you build muscle mass. It's going to help you stay fuller and longer. And it's going to provide so much to your growth because it helps cell growth and it helps cell turnover. So you want to be making sure that you're getting enough protein and that you start working on this goal specifically. If you're not tracking macros at all and you have no idea how to track macros, this is the first component component that I want you to look at. And at first would recommend that you look at the amount of protein that you're eating right now, because if you go from eating 50 grams a day and your goal is to eat 150 grams, that's a big jump and that's going to mess with your digestive system. It's not going to feel doable. It's going to feel challenging. So I want you to start with baby steps and doing this on a slow process, not necessarily going from 50 to 150 grams. It's going to feel impossible and it's going to be feeling hard to stick to. But it is something that's important to know the information, and it's important to know how you can get enough protein. Where I see a lot of women struggle when it comes to their protein is feeling like they can't eat enough and feeling like it's really hard to hit that number. And you have to get creative with protein. If you're only looking at a slab of meat as your source of protein, it's going to be really hard to eat a lot of that if you're new to the concept too. You want to make sure that you can add it in ways that don't have as much volume and doesn't require as much chewing, is the best way to describe it. When you think about eating a steak, after a certain period of time, you're tired, you're not necessarily wanting to chew the steak anymore. And that chewing process is actually part of the digestive system. And when that happens, it makes the hunger kind of slow down. And that's why when you have to chew longer, your hunger kind of goes away after a certain period of time. So if you are focused on really chewing your food, you might notice that you're not as hungry after a couple of minutes. But the more that you have to chew, the more that it's part of the digestive system. But it also is going to kind of make you fuller faster, if that makes sense. So if you're really eating a lot of food that requires a lot of chewing from you, you might find that you don't have enough appetite to finish the amount of protein that you need or the portion size that you need to hit your protein goal. So you have to get creative. And one way that you can do this is through additions in your protein sources. There's ways to add protein in through cheese, through cottage cheese, Greek yogurts, through different toppings that is going. And there's ways to add this in so that it doesn't feel as heavy and it doesn't feel as dense, but then you add in more protein just naturally. And I even recommend this with things like pasta. Like you can get a protein pasta that might be a little bit lower carb. Oftentimes it's about the same amount of carbs, but it has more protein in it. So if you're going to have a pasta dish for dinner, you could get the protein pasta. You can then add in your protein source, whether it's chicken or chicken sausage or whatever that looks like. And then you could add in cottage cheese or Greek yogurt into the sauce to add extra protein. So now you've gone from just having meat in your pasta with regular pasta without cottage cheese or whatever it is, and it would have gone from maybe like 15 to 20 grams to now maybe 45 grams of protein. So it's a way of adding in protein in sneaky ways and finding ways that you can kind of add it into your meals and not necessarily just looking at one source as your protein source. But beyond that, when it comes to protein, your meals should comprise of at least 25 to 35 grams of protein for most people, because that's going to be enough to kind of get you close to your daily protein goal if you're having 3 to 5 meals a day. And if you can do that, you're much more likely to hit your protein goal if you can do that consistently with at least 25 to 35 grams of protein every single meal. And that looks like measuring that out on a scale or using your palm as a measurement for a protein or for the protein size on your plate. So if you're looking at your plate, the first thing you should be adding is your protein source, and look at your palm and make sure you're having maybe like a chicken breast or a slice of steak or a cup of ground beef that's going to add up to around the size of your palm. But that's also maybe close in that gram metric of what you're trying to aim for. And if you want to hit your number exactly, what I would tell you to do is take your protein goal for the day and divide that number by the number of meals that you're going to have in that day. So if you want to have 3 meals, divide your total number by that. If you want to have 5 meals, divide it by that. And then when that's going to help you actually figure out what is the number that you need to be hitting and how can you realistically do so. Then one other rule that I always give my clients is when you're looking at your snacks, if you're really having a hard time hitting your protein, don't use your snack as a way to fill cravings or to fill a void throughout the day. Do it as a way to help you hit your numbers, and you should only be snacking in between meals when you actually have true hunger and using that as a way to hit your macros. So if you're lower on your protein goal, then you want to be making sure that your snacks are only going to be full of volume and full of protein. So that could be Greek yogurt and blueberries, but something that is going to be that is either a micronutrient full of volume and fiber, or that is going to be a protein source or an and/or. We don't want to necessarily do like a bagel or a Pop-Tart or something that's just carb and fat heavy. We want to use these as ways to supplement getting towards our macronutrient goals, and that will help us with the mindless snacking, but it will also help us hit that macronutrient. The second thing that you want to be focusing on is your meal structure, and I kind of piece that in your protein on kind of how to break that out. But you want to make sure that you're really focused on meal structure when it comes to hitting a protein goal, hitting a macronutrient goal. A lot of times I see women really struggle with reaching a goal because they're just focused on eating as little as possible. And that oftentimes leads them to skipping meals or to eating as little as possible to the point where they're so hungry that by the next meal that it comes around, they're binging because they've not given themselves enough calories or sustenance for the entire day. So then that causes them to overeat later and potentially binge, or it causes them to just be in a restrictive state and then they fall off track because they can't keep up with it long term. So you want to actually have a meal structure and make sure that you're eating enough. And I personally struggled with this when I first started my fitness journey is I fell into the trap of just eating as little as possible and I was focused on as eating whole food possible. And oftentimes that meant like skipping meals. Like I think back to my college days and I would have coffee pretty much as like my only meal all the way till like 2 p.m. And then I was starving by like 7 p.m. And it would be something that wasn't necessarily I would normally eat, or it would just be whatever I could find at that point. And what I noticed is my energy was really low and that I wasn't feeling my best. I was kind of drained throughout the day. And it was something that was kind of affecting me long term. And one shift that I made that made such a big difference was focusing on my meals and making sure that I had enough meals throughout the day and going to actually eating 3 meals a day that were structured and focused on my macronutrient range got me way better results than just eating as little as possible. For the longest period of time when I was eating as little as possible, I wasn't seeing muscle mass development. I wasn't really seeing any changes. Nothing was really happening. I was just trying to eat as little as possible because that's just what I thought you had to do. And then when I started eating 3 meals a day, I noticed that I wasn't hungry all of the time. I thought I was a snacker before and that I just constantly like to snack and graze. And it was truly just because I wasn't getting macronutrient distribution across my meals. So I wasn't getting protein, fats, and carbs in every single meal. And I was getting maybe like a carbohydrate source and then I was getting a caffeine source. And then I was getting really ravenous every 1 to 2 hours. And once I started focusing on actually getting a protein source, a complex carbohydrate source, a fiber source, a micronutrient source, and a healthy fat source in my meals and actually building a balanced plate, I noticed so much more progress because then I was staying fuller longer. My blood sugar wasn't going through the roof and I wasn't finding that I was starving later in the day. And I even found that my snacking went down, that I wasn't necessarily having 2 or 3 snacks a day. Sometimes I wasn't having any snacks and some days I would just have one maybe to carry me through to dinner, but it wasn't so intense that I couldn't get through the day. And it actually started to help me see more progress. So getting into a structure where you can actually break down your macronutrients and your calories in a sustainable way into 2 to 5 meals, ideally 3 to 5 meals. But if you're not somebody who's having a lot of meals right now, then I would really focus on 2 solid meals a day. That's going to hit all of those macronutrients and then building those up. This will help you get out of the state of constantly thinking about food and always thinking about your next meal, not being able to stay full, constantly getting hungry in between 1 to 2 hours of your last meal, or even just snacking at night because you're going to have that sustained blood sugar from your meal, but you're also going to stay fuller longer in between those meals because now you've kind of had all of the things that like the fiber, the protein, the healthy fats are going to slow down digestion, keep you fuller longer. And this in turn generally helps people stay within their calorie ranges without blowing through them and constantly kind of stacking up at the end of the day, especially if they find themselves binging or just snacking mindlessly and they can't get their protein and their carbs in range. And oftentimes it's coming down to your meal structure. So that's the first place I would focus if that's an area that you're really struggling in and trying to figure out how you can kind of balance those out into meals that you enjoy and finding a protein source, a carb source, a fat source, and then balancing in your high volume through your fibers and your micronutrients. Focus number 3, and this is going to be like your fat loss cheat code because I know that generally in January, a lot of people have a really big goal of fat loss, or that's one of the higher goals that I see is people wanting to lose weight. So what I want you to kind of have is a good understanding of how you're going to do that, especially after the holidays, and how you can have a focus specifically for that. So this is going to be a little structure of how you're going to do that for fat loss. The first is as you go from the holiday routine, if you haven't been working out, if you don't have a lot of activity and you're just going into a crazy workout routine, the first thing that I would want you to do, and if you're listening to this before the holidays end or before the January one, this is a good tip to kind of take into account right now or to just be thinking about right now because you can do this anywhere. You don't have to, you do this while traveling, you can do this at home, you can do this when you're busy. There's ways to incorporate this, and this is to get your steps up. Steps in a range that is a little more challenging than what you're doing right now. So if you were to track your steps right now and you were hitting 6,000 steps, challenge you to push your steps to maybe 7,500 a day and try to get yourself a higher range that you hit at least 6 times a week. That's going to increase your deficit range, which is going to help you lose weight. The only thing that's going to be indicative of fat loss and how you're going to actually reach a fat loss goal is being in a deficit of some sort. The only way to actually to lose weight is to be in a deficit. And you can do that through 2 core metrics: your nutrition and your training. And training specifically in a way that is going to help you build more muscle mass, so that the more muscle mass you have on your body requires more energy, which requires your body to burn more energy, which is in turn fat, or in cardio, which is going to increase your caloric burn. The other is through nutrition and just eating in a lower range than what you're maintaining. And I like to pair the two together. That is where you will see the best effects without feeling like you're starving and that you couldn't continue forward because it's too restrictive. So, having the best of both worlds. The best cardio method, in my opinion, is your steps because it is low impact. It's not going to deplete your glycogen stores, which is going to cause your hunger to go through the roof. And it's going to be something that is what most people can do. It doesn't require a lot of physical fitness. You can go at any pace you want. It's more about just getting your steps up and getting daily movement. And I told my clients this week, if you want to get your steps up and you're really busy with work or you're really busy with just like family events and things with the holidays, do it with your holiday shopping. Instead of doing online shopping this year, go to the store. Go actually like park at a parking lot really far away from the store, walk in, and then do your holiday shopping around because that's going to get your steps up. It's going to get you some movement and it's going to get your holiday shopping done. So it's a great way to habit stack. But that's the first thing that you should be focusing on is your steps up if you're trying to lose body fat. It's going to help increase your total daily energy expenditure, which is going to increase the amount of calories you burn, which is going to allow you to have a little bit higher number for your deficit range with your nutrition. So it's a little bit more sustainable. So that's the first thing that I would be looking at and making sure that you're focused on getting a lot of daily activity. The second is that you have a good strategic plan in terms of your structure with your training when it comes to having enough progressive overload or enough resistance training each week, paired with a high protein and a calorie deficit nutrition plan. If you have all those three components together, you will lose weight in the new year. And it's just the structure and the strategy in which you use to apply it to your fat loss method. And then focus number 4 is training with progression, not just focusing on training as a punishment or as a way to eat more calories or to recover from your guilt from over the holidays. Training should be used in a structured way to build muscle mass so that your body is at a higher caloric range. So your body requires more energy to maintain itself. The more muscle you have on your body, the leaner you are, which is also going to use more body fat because your metabolism is running at a higher rate and muscle requires more energy than fat. So your metabolism is going to increase and your ability to burn more calories is going to increase, which is going to kind of change that deficit range. You will burn more body fat with the more muscle mass that you have. So you want to make sure that you have a good progressive plan that's going to allow you to build muscle mass. If you're just focusing on going and doing cardio and doing as much as you can and sweating as much as you can, burning 400 calories every workout, you're focused on the wrong things and it's going to cause you to burn out, just not see the progress that you want. So you want to make sure that you have a good progression plan that you can continue with, but that also progresses with you and changes with you as you go. This is going to look like for most people, if they're just starting out, anywhere from 2 to 4 days per week with some sprinkled in cardio. But if you're going beyond that, if you're trying to get 6-7 days per week in and you're going from 0 to 1 days, it's going to feel pretty impossible. So you want to make sure that you're doing this in a way that is conducive to your lifestyle, that is realistic for you and that you can build upon. But it's also going to be focusing on anywhere from 35 to 45-minute workouts that are focused on compound movements, meaning that you're going to be hitting multiple muscle groups at one point, as well as isolated movements, which is going to be hitting one specific muscle group. So compounds would be something like squats, whereas isolated would be something more like a quad extension, which is going to be focusing on specifically on your quads. But you want to have a good split of both because now you'll be focusing on multiple muscle groups with one exercise. So you're not doing 15 exercises when you go to do your workouts, but isolated is going to be really working on the areas where you want to develop more muscle mass and where you want to grow. And then number 5 for your focus is going to be focusing on your fueling strategy based on the bigger goal that you have. If you want to lose muscle weight, you have to be in a caloric deficit. If you want to build muscle mass, or you have to be in maintenance or surplus with your calories, you need to make sure that your fueling strategy is focused on, and I should honestly trademark this because I've been saying this for the last 6 months, and I think it's the best way to describe this. Your fueling strategy should focus on more of the things that get you the results that you want, not just eating less of. We're not looking at just as little as possible. We're focused on more of the things that are going to get us the results we want. More protein, more high volume foods, more meals. We're looking at the things that are actually going to get us more of the results we want, not necessarily less. When we think in a less restrictive mindset, it can be really challenging for us to feel like we are going to be able to get out of this on the other end. It's going to start feeling like a challenging mindset because you're going to feel like, I can't have this. It's restrictive. And that leads you towards negative thoughts and not having enough balance. So I want you to think about eating more of more whole foods, more protein, more meals, and making sure that it's more of the things that are going to get you the result that you want, not just necessarily less, because eating less isn't going to get you the results that you want. It's more of and making sure that it's actually structured. That's what's going to actually get you results. Because if you're just eating less and you're not eating enough protein and you're not eating necessarily the right right calorie range and you have no energy and you can't show up for your workouts, of course you don't have results. And there's a reason for that because your fueling strategy isn't actually aligned to that goal that you want. So you need to make sure that all kind of works together so that it makes sense and that it's easy for you to stick with. It makes sense. You have the clarity and you know what to be focusing on, but also that you're just not living in that restrictive mindset. Because when you do that, it causes you to get into that on and off cycle where you feel like you can't have any of the things in a balanced way. And it's just not a good state to live in because it's not really going to get you results for very long. Most people can't do that for very long. So that's my biggest strategy for you as you're going into January. If you are focused on these things, you will be able to sustain your plan for a really long period of time and hopefully kind of break that 80% statistic of people falling off track and falling off of their New Year's resolutions, because I want you to succeed and I want you to have all of the things that you need in order to actually reach these goals. And I've got a few questions about the January Jumpstart Challenge that I'm doing in January. So I'm just going to run you through a little bit of what that looks like. But right now I have two options in terms of working together if that's something that you're interested in. It's one-on-one coaching and it's the challenge. The challenge is something that is going to be a 6-week program. Generally, I run these through my fitness app, but I'm going to be trying it through Solin right now, which is a very popular fitness platform. A lot of fitness coaches use this, but it also gave you guys a lot of opportunities to win prizes. So I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to be a part of that. There's a $100,000 giveaway that they're doing for some of the best transformation. There's a lot of details inside of the app where you can check into that. But my whole point of moving it to this platform is because I want you to have a reward for the effort that you're putting in and be able to get something out of the outcome. Right now it's on pre-sale. So if you're listening to this live or before the 17th, you have the opportunity to get the challenge for $39 down from $79. And that's $39 for the entire 6 weeks. And you get to keep it forever. This is a great opportunity for you to jump into a challenge, get started, and to just have something to kind of jump you through the new year. It's 6 weeks. And this is a plan that I followed 1,000 times over. It's some of my favorite workouts. I always use this when I feel like I'm falling off track and when I'm looking for results. And I give this to a lot of clients when they fall off track because it's a great plan and it's a great split. It's a little more challenging than maybe like what I would be doing right now for my fitness challenge, but it's going to give you a lot of structure. It's going to give you a good progressive plan so that you can actually see changes in the next 6 weeks. So you can join that. And like I said, it's on pre-sale right now if you're listening to this live. Otherwise, it's at the price that's listed when you click the link. It is one of my favorite challenges, but I'm excited to kind of try all it out in this app and see where it goes from here. One-on-one coaching, I'm doing a lot of fun things in the next coming months. Right now, I'm filling January and February spots, but you have to be on the wait list in order to get there. January is kind of pretty much full at this point. So you have to kind of apply through there in order to get a spot. But that's going to be the best way to kind of get into one-on-one coaching at my highest level of support. And that's something that we'll be doing a few different exciting things in January and February for, like I mentioned. This is like a time where I know a lot of people are looking for their transformation. This is a time where I get to work with so many amazing women. And this is a very high time in terms of volume for people coming in. So just know that you have to be on that wait list if you're interested. It doesn't commit you to anything at all. Literally nothing. It's going to give you information about the program. If I think that your application is something that fits for the program, I will accept it and I will either send you an offer or a link to schedule a call just kind of based on where I think you're at and if you'd be a good fit for the program and kind of what we need to do next. So it just kind of gives you more information. And I really don't like sales. I really don't like anything pushy. Like I'm a believer in divine timing. And I believe that if it's something that you're interested in and it's something that you've been thinking about, then there's a reason that you're hearing about it. But if it's something that you're just not ready to do or you just don't want to do it, even after you hear about the information, like by all means, that's not something that I want to push you to do. So it's truly about getting you a solution that's going to work for you and help you reach your transformation. But it's also making sure that you're fit for the program. Like I'm not going to push you if I don't think that it's something that's going to be a good fit because the program really is for women who want to see a transformation, who are ready to commit to it, who are looking for strength-based training and who are looking for support with nutrition and training because I do both of those. So that's kind of a little bit more about what that looks like. And if you want more information, you can find all of that in the show notes. Like I've mentioned a few other times, there's some areas in the show notes that you can be checking out for like freebies. I have a transformation roadmap that I've revamped. There's a lot of different information in there for just kind of like guiding you through the process of what to be figuring out if you're stuck, if you're in a plateau where you just don't know where to start with your transformation. That's a great resource for just kind of like diagnosing that and figuring out where you're at. And then running through some of the series that I have in terms of podcasts and through the guide itself to kind of work you through that transformation and getting you those resources. I also have added a 30-minute training to that. It's actually closer to like 45 minutes. I'm kind of running through the transformation roadmap and giving you a little bit more information about it. So that is down in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I'll talk to you next week in the next episode.